anyone has any questions about this, so please feel free to ask Dilip any questions that you may have. It's more deep. Probably, you have to think more about what you said and write it down. Think about it more.
Let's see what's on the chat. Oh, I love this informative presentation. Well, thank you. Shri, this is for you. Please don't cut corners for the summertime. Continue with these programs. That's what Anjali is saying. If you want to join Shri Yoga, yep. Thank you. Okay. Any questions anybody has? Any comments? Any challenges? Don't forget that we come from a Vedic tradition. You have to challenge people or at least support it if you like it.
Dilip, hello,
Yeah.
Sadil Pensri.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes.
Maslow's triangle you have shown, the hierarchy, everything, but with the security of the family, you have shown the different categories there.
Yeah. What about it?
Security is you don't miss about the security of the person.
Yeah. Well, it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
Yes.
Maslow was a psychologist who came up with this triangle. And he says the third on the top, as you go from the bottom, is safety and security. And that is what it talks about.
Okay, I missed that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. No problem. Anybody else?
Hi, Dilip.
Yeah.
This is Vandana from Chicago.
Oh, hi, Vandana.
So, Avinash and I have this question, and we have always pondered on it, that why was the knowledge of the Vedic knowledge about scientific discoveries that were made many thousands of years before the Western civilization did those things, why were they not ever well known in the world? What is the
why didn't it go forward?
Yeah, why didn't it go forward or be known all over the world?
Well, these are two questions, excellent questions. This is my feeling. I'm not an expert in this area, but let me tell you what I think what happened. The universities in India, the Nalanda, Takshashila, at that time, there were several more universities, and the knowledge was flowing, and people used to come there for the latest knowledge in both physical and spiritual sciences. Large libraries. But then what happened was there was no defense in terms of military defense which was built. And when the invaders started coming from the Middle East and started looting because of all the gold and what have you, they started burning literature because it didn't make sense. And a lot of literature had figurines on it. And you know how murtis are looked at by in Islam. And there is a saying, people say that when Nalanda University's library was burnt, it was burning for 7 days, the books. So the amount of literature which got burnt was amazing. And this is where the knowledge resided. Now, what happened was many of these rishis, when there was an oral tradition, they went into hiding. And they felt that if I put it on paper, it is going to be stolen and we will lose it. So they continue to pass it on. And sometimes in that passing on to the next generation, it got lost. So there is what we see is amazing, but that to me is probably 10%, maybe 15% of what existed. So that's one part of your answer. The second part, why did it not go to the West? Well, the West came to India and then took the knowledge away. It was very interesting because and people used to come to India for education, just like we came to America for education. So there was no need for us or for the Indian professors to go anywhere. People used to come there. Still, then what happened was there was also West underwent a lot of revolution, whereby they borrowed everything from Greek and Romans, and did not cross the Caucasian mountains to find out what is the reservoir of knowledge, the body of knowledge which exists in the East. This for Galileo in 1600 to find out heliocentricity, that the sun is the center of the Milky Way, and then say, wow, I found something. Or even for Copernicus, that's silly, because for 1,000 years before that, the Indian rishis knew about it. They called it Bhugol. Earth is round, not flat, and Europe was still considering Earth was flat Earth. So there was this feeling, and then materially they grew. The West grew materially, and material wealth accounted a lot more than spiritual wealth. So all of those came together. Anybody else has any other comments on why this happened? What Vandana and Avinash asked? Very good question, though.
Thank you, Dilip. Thank you. You gave a very satisfactory explanation to the question. So I would really welcome other perspectives also. That would be nice to hear.
So looks like Raj Kishore wants to talk, but okay, go ahead.
Okay. Can I add one more thing? I think beyond the two things you mentioned, there is also the history written by the victor. And India got occupied by invaders, and they wrote the history, destroying the evidence which existed about our achievements.
That's correct. Yes.
Good.
True.
Now, my corollary to what Vandana was saying, what I feel is, but for the last 70 years, we've been independent. It's about time that we start putting in a lot of effort in at least preserving and expanding what we have, rather than just, basking in the past glory. Yeah, there was a lot of past glory. That's fine. That's great. We feel good about it. But let's move on, utilize that, and start building on it. And hopefully this current government or the new governments will put some emphasis on that.
We have discussed various subjects in this and brought so many, which if they are taken to the depth, we'll find some common thing. And out of it, this is the commonest thing, which even a very small person must be reciting today, like
Can you identify yourself? We don't know who you're talking. Who's talking?
no mental stress and mental intelligence. I'm talking. These are very common words which have been being utilized in various.
Well, mental peace and mental health is being handled by in Patanjali very well in the Ashtanga Yoga. In fact, the whole yoga is about calming of the mind.
Because that has taken a very common place of discussion at various stages. And if you go to the depth of it through different channels, then you will find that it will take you to all the subjects which you have covered over here to be.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not well with my health, and that's why I cannot.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Rohini has her hand up. Go ahead,
What
Rohini.
book? What? Hi. Thank you very much. खूपच आवडलं मला आणि उजाळा मिळाला काही माहित असलं तरी. तर कोणतं पुस्तक तुमचं आहे की ज्याच्यात ही सगळी आजच्या प्रवचनातली माहिती आहे? माझ्या नातवाला मी देणार आहे, कारण आता समर मध्ये त्याला वाचता येईल. आता तो कॉलेजमध्ये जाईल, तर दिस इज अ गुड टाइम फॉर हिम टू रीड दिस.
So
Even I have published a book on mental life since last 2.5 years, and it has been pretty.
काय नाव आहे?
So, Rohini, the book we are referring to, the 7 Stars of Hinduism,
Oh,
does not have 7 Stars of Hinduism, but that does not have this information. It does have the core, that model that I talked about, and what is the core of our religious tradition. You will enjoy that, and your grandson will find it very valuable, because that talks not about the puja archa, but it talks about the philosophy of Hinduism and how it relates to today's life, 21st century American life. So it's called 7 Stars of Hinduism.
7 Thoughts.
7 Stars. Stars.
Let me write it down on the chat.
We'll write it on the chat. Ima, you can send an email to me or Shri. Shri and I are in touch with each other. We'll be happy.
I'm sorry, I have a hearing problem.
No, not a problem. Okay.
So, but you can see the what I have written under this.
Star. Oh, stars. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stars. Okay. Oh, good. आणि हे कुठे मिळेल मला?
We'll have to send it to you.
Oh, okay.
तुम्ही तुमचा पत्ता पाठवा श्रीला, आम्ही arrange करू.
Okay, thank you.
I have put my address in the chat box, sabnis@hit.com. That's at the top. And you can just email your address, send me email, and
I'll work with
Dilip can send this to you. And also recording of this session, if anyone is interested and is not part of Shri Yoga, you can on the chat box, or you can just send me email at sabnis@his.com, and I will forward YouTube recording to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Dilip, this is Surya Prasad.
Yes,
yeah, I'm sending you an email. Actually, I posted in the chat box also. You don't have to answer me right now, but this is more for you to think about, because for the younger generation, how do you answer some of their questions? You brought about a lot of concepts and a lot of thoughts that we both of us agree on these, because we are scientists at the same time. We are in Vedanta classes and things like that. See, what younger generation want is everything they want existential, and they want proof for everything that we tell them, So how do you explain this? This is the question I have, or comment, actually more than question for you. That would be for anyone in this group, I guess. But you can answer me at your leisure. There is no hurry on this, but I wanted to, see what your thoughts would be.
Well, I'll make one comment, because this is a subject which requires a lot more discussion. But I'll make one comment for you. Is this is a typical Western thinking. Show me or prove it to me, only then I will buy into it, right?
Yeah.
And a good scientist, if you have an observation, and if an explanation, a hypothesis can explain that observation consistently over a period of time in many different situations, then that hypothesis is accepted as a theory. Okay.
Yes.
Aspirin gets rid of the headache amongst 99% of the people. So aspirin is a good medicine for headache. We may not have understood how it works, what kind of perceptors, what kind of chemicals, but it does do this. So there is an observation and there is a hypothesis. And then until such time that you disprove it, you got to accept it. And light is a very good example. the light as a wave was accepted as a theory after the hypothesis was made that wave function can explain interference as well as the diffraction properties of light. So light is a wave. So for 200 years, we accepted that because there was no way of refuting, disputing that hypothesis. You accept it because it satisfied all the observations. Only when Einstein came, people questioned it. So what I'm saying is, unless you have a good scientist will say that, okay, this particular hypothesis can prove it, can explain the observation, but unless you can disprove it, you got to accept it. So I would turn around to a scientist and say, you disprove something for me to throw it away. Lack of evidence, lack of proof does not mean that there is no proof that it exists.
Yeah, but
If
it is
you can
not
explain, if you can explain the observations, it should not be contraindicative of what you observe.
Right. Now, with science, you can do that, and this is commonly practiced. But Vedanta and religion for the kids, the younger generation here who are brought, raised, and educated, they often question this. And so, how do we prove this? That is the thing.
That's exactly why my presentation. That people tend to associate religion and Vedanta in the
Yes.
same way as any other faith. But Vedanta and Hindu tradition is very, very rigorous in nature. It is a scientific approach. It is
Yes.
not like any other faith. It is not like a book that, okay, it's written there, so you accept it. No. It says it has been tested through rigorous debate, dialogues, and testing. So that is the misconception we need to take off from our next generation, that it is not faith-based. You don't trust it because I say so, but it has been proven. Now, one of the things can be Shabda Praman, which is, it's like Einstein says that relativity exists. So I may not understood, but I trust Einstein, so I accept relativity as a valid hypothesis or valid theory. I do not understand black hole, but all the eminent physicists support black hole and white dwarf, so I accept that as a theory. I have not understood that, but I've accepted it. That is called Shabda Praman. And
Yes.
some of the concepts in Vedanta has to be taken as Shabda Praman because I have not realized Brahman yet.
So one thing I want to mention is I talked to Dilip about this, that on this Shri Yoga platform, I want to start one session series for the teenagers or some younger generation people, and I'm in the process of trying to get some group to address the teenagers, and hopefully that will get at least this process started.
Avinash
Yes.
has his hand up.
Yes. Let me see. हे कसं करायचं?
We can hear you.
Okay, Dilip. Very nice presentation. I only heard half of it, but anyway, to address the previous question by I believe it was from Mr. Surya Prasad.
Yes.
About scientific explanation for the current situation. Remember, last weekend when we had that other session, I mentioned that our law of karma, where there is a you inherit
Prarabdha, Sanchita, and
Prarabdha and Sanchit. There is an exact correspondence in science today. We didn't know this previously, but now we know that Prarabdha corresponds to what you inherit from your parents, right? The genes.
Genetic.
However, not all the genes express themselves because they depend upon your current deeds or how you behave yourself or your lifestyle. And so there is a explanation for the Sanchit that you can change the Prarabdha. So there is a, for the new generation who are interested in, science, one can explain that way, that this concept of prarabdha and sanchit is not something completely, theoretical. There is a scientific correspondence to it.
Yeah. What Avinash was telling me last weekend after my presentation, he was explaining very well epigenetics. Prarabdha may be genetics, Sanchita may be epigenetics. And that was a long discussion, but that's a good point, Avinash. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dilip, Anil Pense.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's an excellent talk. You gave us all explanation, and it's my experience. I was in the seminar, and it's about the yoga
Yes.
and the mind, body, consciousness, and finally, heart surgeon came, cardiologist came there, and he said that let's do some standing yoga. And he said that say Om. And he said, by calling Om, you are not going to convert yourself to Hinduism. But believe me, it has some positive effect in your body, in your life. So finally, everybody started Om, and really they felt good. So now more and more people are going towards the East for the health and knowledge. That's what you mentioned just now is correct. This really is good.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you, Anil.
and thanks a lot for the nice talk today. Excellent.
Thank you.
And one more thing.
Go ahead, please.
Can we pass your slides today? If we can get your slides to send it to our friends.
Sure. Actually, what Sri is going to do is he has recorded the session, and not just slides, but also the commentary together. The whole thing will be available. Right, Sri?
Because our grandkids are watching all this.
So your choice, if you want the comments to be included, we can include that for sure in one session, in one YouTube video or two videos, something like that.
No, just the presentation. The discussion can be a separate one.
Okay.
We can, but yes, Anil, we can arrange to send you the information.
And just related to that, one question I had, Dilip, is some of the slides said proprietary information. Is that okay with you? That
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
And can we have more like these sessions from you?
That's up to Sri.
So, Mr. Pensek, if you include your email or send me email, I can include you. We have almost every week there is some session going on.
Okay. I will.
Not just one, sometimes more than one sessions.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a very interesting question on the chat from my good friend Shivaji. Could you please succinctly summarize the differences, not the similarities, but the differences of approaches of Vedanta and science? And what is the value derived from those differences in Vedanta? Excellent question. And the big difference, one big difference which stands out in my analysis is the experiential part rather than experimental. And the West is beginning to understand. The value is now they're beginning to understand the value of experiential, but they never understood what is experiential. And the rishis of the lore, they used to have experiential awakening, experiential revelations. In the West, that is not known. Handful of people probably, the religious ones probably had that, but that experiential recognition, revelation or the realization is not uncommon in the East. And I think that is a big value. And yoga, what she teaches, and the later part of the Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga comprises of yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, and dhyana, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. So dharana, dhyan, and the samadhi, all of that is going into that area which West has never been involved with. Now they are talking about, um, meditation and all of those areas. Those are some of my thoughts. What does anybody else think? You are all knowledgeable people in this. To Shivaji's question, Shivaji, you have anything else to say? Please.
Well,
unmute yourself.
I was going towards the part. I always appreciate your perspectives with talk, of course. That you talked about the similarities on one side, the the science approach and the Vedanta. So somebody can turn around and ask, science is evolving, giving us new results. So what is if in many ways, and as you have devoted much of your talk to showing a lot of things in the Vedanta is similar. So one could ask the question, why not just pursue science? Why Vedanta? So the focus of this question is to try to elucidate some thoughts on why Vedanta. So given today's world, and young people could answer, I mean, you are talking about all the similarities, then just pursue science because it's evolving and giving you more results and benefits and understanding of the universe. So what is the value of pursuing Vedanta? That is what I think I was trying to get at.
So,
But then what are the focus should be, in my opinion, that.
yeah, so the focus is not that, because I think to some extent we alluded to that unfortunately the growth of the body of knowledge in the Vedanta or the Vedic type of knowledge got arrested after the invaders came.
Yeah.
And Raj alluded to that about the victors versus the vanquished. And what has happened is the people who would do the studies have moved to the West, a lot of them, and now there is an amalgamation. So I don't anticipate independent growth in the Vedantic thought process. Now it will be an amalgamated, combined growth as the West picks up some of the Vedantic concepts of meditation and mindfulness and what have you, and start implementing them, or yoga, and the East picks up the Western science and starts implementing them. There will be a just human growth or human progress in the science. And what is science? It is the search for the ultimate reality, which we have, and that search will continue. And the journey has now become, instead of independent East and West, it is now slowly becoming a joint journey. At least that is my perception. So the value is for the West to learn from the East and pick it up where it was left, and for East to utilize the Western methods to further and take that. And that's why I said that I hope that after independence, the governments in India will start putting in some efforts into studying more of the store or the body of knowledge that we have, ancestral knowledge, and start building on it with the help of the West, with the help of the new tools that are available in the West.
Hey, Dilip, if I may ask,
Yeah.
When you say experiential knowledge, are you talking about same as hypothesis is experiential, or
Experiencing something.
yeah? So I mean, normally the scientific method is that you experience something and you form a hypothesis and then you test
No,
it.
what I meant was experiential. That means you actually sense it, you actually feel it. Okay, it is the example. Some of the examples I gave of Western scientists. Nobody. Einstein did not come up with theory of relativity through an experiment. It's through intuition. Something happened. Something happened in his brains that he came up with.
But he was able to do some experiments to prove it.
No, he did not. it was proven by others. There's a famous quote by him that I hope that somebody can prove it through experiments.
Right, right.
It
No,
took
for sure.
several decades.
Either he or somebody else proved it.
Eventually, yes.
Eventually. So
Yeah,
my
they-
question is, lot of the concepts in Vedanta, for example, the basic concepts that we all have the same Atma and so forth. आणि हे जे आहे की rebirth, concept of karma, law of karma. So what is I mean, as far as I know, there is no, you cannot
Well,
prove it.
I'll give you an example, Avinash. You brought the law of karma and rebirth, reincarnation. That is a very important concept in
That's the basic basis of
in
Hinduism.
our religious tradition.
Right.
University of Virginia, a well-known university, reputable university, in the medical department, in the parapsychology, they have a department. They are studying on the reincarnation and rebirth phenomena. There are there's a department, and there are a few professors who are dedicated to that. They are studying, so they are applying. Now, this is a very Eastern concept of reincarnation, but they are applying all the methods and the tools used in the West, such as documentation, such as interviews, such as validating the truth and that kind of thing, to establish whether indeed that is true or not. If it is proven to be untrue, then we should strike it out. But until it is, if we can explain a lot of these phenomena, then one has to accept the hypothesis. So that's what I was getting at, that there is going to be a marriage of the West and the East as world becomes smaller. I see all of my colleagues here and friends, many of them are scientists. They are born and raised in India, including you, and they've come here. So they are quite familiar with the Western tools and methodologies.
Yes.
They are also grounded in the Vedantic. So do you think that they will not, more and more such things happen, there will be a more of amalgamation, and that is what is good. That is excellent, because
Yes.
that's how we can pursue in search of truth.
So sometimes I think, and maybe some cynical person may think, is that the Vedantic philosophy is to make you feel better about dying. That, oh, you are not dying, you are going to come back in another form. So is that, I mean, somebody can think that, right? That
Absolutely.
that it is simply a way of pacifying, or calming your fears.
Sure. And somebody may think that way. Somebody may say that it is to not just pacify fear, but make you behave properly, so that you
Yes.
you become a good
Yeah.
component of the society. In
Yeah.
fact, most of the atheists, supposedly atheists, will claim, in fact, communists also claim, that religion is basically opium, right? Opium for the masses, because your religion tells you that you behave well and you'll go to heaven, you'll go to paradise, you'll be born in a better situation. So
Right.
that is one way to make you behave as the government or as the big man wants you to behave, or
Yeah.
as the religion wants you to behave.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that can be, and who knows? But until it is proven otherwise,
No, yeah, I'm just
and fortunately for me, from what I have read in Vedanta, there is no such thing as dogma and prescriptiveness.
Right.
That's one thing I found out, that I find that in our literature, in our tradition, there is no prescriptive thing that you must do this or you must not do this. It says that if you do this, this is likely to happen. If you do this, this is likely to happen. It's up to you.
one thing for sure, it makes you really think.
Yes, and it's such a big Bhagavad Gita. With after all 18 chapters, Sri Krishna does not tell Arjun what to do. He says that I've told you the truth. I've told you everything you need to know. Now it's up to you to decide what you want to do.
Right.
So what a fantastic way of treating the other person as a mature individual.
Thank you, Dilip.
Dilip, this is Shivaji.
Yeah.
Thank you for your responses.
Did I respond to your question, Shivaji? Maybe not right, but did I at least address it?
The amalgam, I'm certainly, I certainly agree that there should be this amalgamation between the East and the Western approaches. I just have a slight difference of opinion because you have said it a few times. And being a physicist myself, I want to give you a perspective about Einstein. You keep saying he didn't do any experiments and all that. Well,
Okay.
while you're right, I think it may be disingenuous to say that because Einstein was such a giant. He knew good experiments and he took the value of those experiments. It's as if somebody like him doing the experiment himself. In fact, the speed of light, there were numerous experiments and they keep coming about with alternative things like ether and so on. Nobody was addressing the fact. And he went with the assumption that, okay, the speed of light is the maximum, is the absolute, in vacuum. And so he went with that and he developed the special relativity.
Why did he come up with that speed of light being the maximum? How did he arrive at that?
And that was the experiments. You see? Oh, okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is that he may not have done experiments himself, but it was like, people like Michelson and Morley did the experiments, right?
Mhm.
And he understood the results, came up with the theories to understand what was going on. You see, even the photoelectric effect that was observed, but he came. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think it serves the purpose of what you're trying to do. Maybe a little longer discussion. It's not necessary to say that he didn't do experiments because he based his theories on experiments that were done already, later on also proved. But for example, the speed of light, as I said, is very fundamental, that from which this special relativity evolved. And then once the special relativity, I don't want to get into the physics here, but special relativity does with constant velocities. So then after that, he had to address the question of acceleration, which he said is nothing but gravity, And the thing is that both these, and that required brute force, lots of abstract mathematics, developing, inventing the tensors, even taking what we had studied into further to develop the whole science of tensor mathematics. And that was really very challenging. So, but it really began with the experiments of the speed of light. And then let me also add quickly. In fact, a lot of people are not aware. Even the existence of atoms, the Brownian motion, his first paper in 1905, which did not get the Nobel Prize, but it itself was an experimental proof of the existence of atoms. Nobody, even for centuries, had really could say, okay, that materials are made of atoms. His Brownian motion showed that. So because of these forces going, and he theorized, but he came up with experiments. So all I'm saying is I'm trying to just provide my perspective and saying that it may not be useful or valuable for you to make that point for what you are trying to say. I'm not saying that you're not right, but I think it may be a little distraction that I need to say that. Because scientists have, you cannot be, many theoreticians have closely aligned with experiments.
No, I understand. Your points are very well taken. Thank you.
Oppenheimer was a theoretician, right?
Right.
Basically. So what did they do? The whole project.
Manhattan Project, yes.
Numerous experiments in lots of Manhattan projects, right?
Yes.
Which he had to understand and do. So all I'm saying is that I think it's not necessary to do.
Oh, I
Yeah,
understand.
I think we'll close the meeting soon. Unless are there more questions? Vandana, you want to say something? You're on mute. Vandana, you're on mute.
I have bothered Dilip enough with my very basic questions. So if he wishes to answer, please go ahead, Dilip. Are you aware of any studies that are done here in the West that explain the experiential, the theory or of our religion or any other, which you claim that the West is beginning to address that?
All I can say is I can make general comments that
Yeah.
the very fact that there is proliferation of things like meditation, thoughtfulness, and all of these to calm the mind are an indication that West is getting aware and recognizing. It has come through Buddhism, not necessarily through Hinduism, but Buddhists picked it up from Hinduism. But the Buddhists and the Hindus and West has picked up some of these things, and they have recognized that there is such a thing as experience peace in mind and experience some of these things, and it has a beneficial impact on your physical health. So that is material. So on one hand, you experience non-materially in your mind, which is not considered as a material in the West. But although Manakosha in Vedanta, mind is also considered to be one of the components of your body. But calming the mind can have a positive impact on your heart, on your kidney, on your lungs, and that is slowly being recognized, and that itself is an indication that even medical community is recognizing that. Um, so, but long ways to go, and uh, as Shivaji's question points out, that we have not made much of progress in the Vedanta ever since for the last probably 500-600 years. And it's about time, because of circumstances, I guess. It's about time that we start amalgamating the two and start working as collective humanity, for the good of the humanity, really.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll just, I will provide the recording soon. And thank you, Dilip, and all the participants for a wonderful session.
Thank you. Shri, can you make the recording in 2 parts?
Yeah.
The question and answer doesn't have to be a part of the main recording, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you for active participation.